Nobody warns women what it feels like to lose a lot of money after 60. They'll probably just tell you to stay positive, stay optimistic. I lost almost half my worth after 60, and it wasn't because I was reckless or stupid. It was because life shifts, energy shifts, health shifts, and suddenly you don't have the ambition to recover, and you certainly don't have time on your side. When you are younger, losing money can feel like a lesson. When you're over 60, it feels like your security is slipping through your fingers. When you are 30, you rebuild. When you're over 60, you calculate. Every decision feels really heavy. I'm not sharing this because I want sympathy. I'm sharing this because I didn't see it coming. I think sometimes women can be more vulnerable than they realize. Over time, I didn't try to tie my security to one income stream. I did exactly what we hear all the time. I diversified. I did not put my eggs all in one basket. I built small businesses, primarily retail fashion, but that wasn't the only businesses that I built. I started out without a business partner, but quite soon my main income was with a partner, so my income was tied to the partnership. And just hearing the word partnership, you probably think, well, I've got some idea, I think, where she's going with this, but not exactly. Yes, it was a part of it, and it probably was a big part of it, but it wasn't all of it. Because here in Australia, small business people don't obtain superannuation. So most small business people look for other ways to secure their future retirement. And one of the main ways is through real estate, and for me, that was residential investment properties. At times I purchased the residential properties. Now when I say purchased, I don't mean owning. I mean the bank actually owns them, and here it's what we call negative gearing. At times I owned a few of those residential investment properties with my partner, but after some time I was only left with a couple, and they were in my own name. Now when I say purchased, I don't mean purchase outright. I mean the bank still really owns them. You don't really own them, and there's usually a lot of debt involved. And usually what will secure that debt is your principal place, your own home. And most small business people tend to do this later on when they've paid off their own mortgage for their own home or reasonably close to it. So for many of us, we don't start young. Even to embark upon my main small businesses, I was already in my late 20s. I had 2 children, so I was really a single mother. Even though I had a partner and a business partner who was the same, I was responsible financially for both of my children. And if anyone thinks that small business is easy, generally I call it blood, sweat and tears. I worked hard, I worked long hours, and you're never really free of the responsibility. You take it home with you. Looking back, I would say I was probably a little bit overconfident in my security, but none of us can predict global changes. So it wasn't just one incident, there were several things that happened at once, and not a lot was within my control. Some of it, to some extent, yes, but not all of it. And don't forget what they say about hindsight, 20/20 vision. We can see so much more clearly when we look back. I'm still uncertain if I could have prevented the collapse. It was like a deck of cards, it just came tumbling down. Health issues were involved, and they weren't just my own, and a relationship breakup. And because my partner was my business partner, that made it extremely difficult. So I have the global economy, health issues in the family, a relationship breakup. Yes, a perfect storm. Did I see any of it coming? Maybe a little bit, but certainly not to the extent of what unfolded. Because my world got turned upside down, what happened was I started to make decisions out of fear. And usually I was much more practical, much more rational with business decisions at least. And sometimes when fear is driving you, you can't make decisions from a grounded place. Things were moving faster than I could process. Now I did try and hang on. I hung on as long as I could. In fact, I hung on too long. A lot of people do that because we just don't want to lose what took so many years to build. All that hard work, all that ambition, all that passion, all that drive. We don't want to let go of that. You really do have to know when to walk away, and yes, I could have walked away a lot earlier than what I did. Psychologically, there's a lot to cope with. In some ways, your whole identity collapses. Now you have a lot of uncertainty. You have to reassess your whole lifestyle, recalculate your security. So how did I handle all of this? How did I go on? Certainly had to recalibrate. I had to reduce risk. I'd say overall, I had to simplify. I probably became a little bit conservative with financial or anything to do with money. And one thing I learned is that I had to detach my identity from my net worth. That part took time. When you see yourself as a certain way and other people see you in a certain way for decades, and quite quickly, you are no longer that person. You do adapt because you have to adapt. And that's what humans do. We're good at doing that. That's what humans are rather good at doing. That's why Homo sapiens are still here. For the time being, that is. If you're looking for any morals in all of this, I would say the number one thing is to be incredibly wary of partnerships, business partnerships. I personally don't favour them now. For me, there is good reason. At the time, a close friend said to me, and this friend knew me before I got into business partnerships with my partner, aren't you better, one, paying other people to do all the extra things that you can't do, and also utilising the bank's money rather than sharing 50% of your profit? That was such a light bulb moment. If any of you ladies are still watching, you're watching to the end, because I assume that probably nobody watches the end of my videos. Some of you might already have secure business partnerships. I really do hope they are. If you're contemplating any type of business partnership, just go in with your eyes wide open, get some legal advice, definitely. Spend that few $100s or however it costs to sit down with a solicitor. It's very important to know your legal rights. I found out after. I wasn't actually quite sure of legally my entitlements in a 50-50 partnership. I'm here to say you're quite vulnerable in those business arrangements. I would suggest, if you can, do it alone. If you can't economically manage it without a partner, you might need to question whether you should be going into this business enterprise at all. And I'm sure there's some great stories out there, great success stories. I wouldn't recommend doing it with your family either. I'm sure you've noticed this is just a new channel, an itty bitty channel. If you've got feedback, I would love to hear from any women that anything similar has happened to. I would just absolutely love to get some comments from ladies that can relate to any part of my story. And I sincerely hope that things worked out better for you. But I'm still standing, literally. It wasn't quite as lucrative, but thank goodness I didn't have any partners. And I would never have one again. Of course, this is just my experience, but I've got reason to speak from experience.